Last year, a friend of mine walked into the most important job interview of his life. He'd spent 3 weeks preparing. He knew every answer. He had data, examples, a killer closing line. And within 7 seconds of stepping through the door, the hiring manager had already made up her mind. He didn't get the job. Not because of what he said, because of what he did before he said anything at all. And that's the thing nobody warns you about. Most conversations, the ones that actually matter, the negotiations, the first dates, the pitches, the hard talks with your boss, are won or lost before a single word leaves your mouth. You're fighting a war you don't even know has started. Let me show you how to win it. There's a principle in psychology called the serial position effect. It was first described by Hermann Ebbinghaus back in the 1880s, and it says something disarmingly simple. People remember the first thing and the last thing. Everything in the middle turns into mush. Think about it. You go to a party. 20 people introduce themselves. Who do you remember? The first person who shook your hand, and the last one who said goodbye. Everyone in between blurs into a vague cloud of faces and names you've already forgotten. So here's the play. Be first or be last. When you walk into a room, a networking event, a meeting, a dinner with strangers, don't hover at the edges waiting for someone to notice you. Step up. Introduce yourself before anyone else does. Or, if the moment's passed, wait. Let everyone else go. Then close. Because the person who speaks last in a round of introductions gets an unfair advantage. They're the ones still echoing in the room when the conversation begins. But which position is better? Here's what most people get wrong. They think first is always stronger. It's not. First is better when you want to set the tone. Last is better when you want to be remembered. Choose based on what you need. Now, let's talk about something that happens in the first 5 seconds. And I mean literally 5. You've probably heard that first impressions form fast, but you might not know how fast. Princeton psychologists Janine Willis and Alexander Todorov ran a study where they showed people faces for just 1/10 of a second. A tenth! That's faster than a blink. And the judgments people made in that fraction of a moment about trustworthiness, competence, likability, barely changed even when they were given more time to look. The snap judgment stuck. So what does this mean for you? It means the 5 seconds between the moment you appear and the moment you speak are everything. Your posture, your pace, the way your eyes move across the room, whether you look like you belong or like you're apologizing for being there. All of that registers before a single syllable. Here's what I want you to try. Before your next important conversation, a presentation, a meeting, a date, anything, close your eyes and rehearse those 5 seconds. Not your opening line, not your argument, just the entrance. How do you walk in? What does your face look like? Where do your hands go? Play it like a movie in your head. Because your brain, as it turns out, doesn't draw a hard line between something vividly imagined and something actually experienced. When you've already lived those 5 seconds mentally, your body knows what to do when it's time for the real thing. The hesitation disappears. You stop looking like someone who just wandered into the wrong room. But here's the catch, and this is where most advice about first impressions falls apart. You can walk in like a king and still blow it with one wrong detail, and that detail has nothing to do with confidence. It has to do with your clothes. Not what you'd expect, right? I'm not going to tell you to dress well. That's obvious. What I'm going to tell you is to dress congruently. There's a difference. Dressing well means looking sharp. Dressing congruently means matching the room. Let's say you've got a job interview at a startup. Everyone there wears hoodies and sneakers. You walk in wearing a 3-piece suit with a silk pocket square. You look great. You also look like you don't belong. The room reads you as an outsider before you've even sat down. Or flip it. You're pitching to a boardroom of executives and you show up in jeans because you want to look authentic. Same problem. Wrong signal. The goal isn't to stand out. Not yet. Not in the first 5 seconds. The goal is to eliminate friction. You want the room to think, this person is one of us. Once they've decided that, everything you say afterward lands differently. You've earned a kind of unspoken trust. And here's the subtle part. If you're nervous, wearing something attention-grabbing works against you. A bold, red outfit pulls every eye in the room straight to you. If you're already sweating, that's not the spotlight you want. Save the power colors for the day you're running on confidence, not adrenaline. Okay, you've entered the room. Right. You look like you belong. Now what? Now you need to do something that feels deeply uncomfortable. You need to look people in the eyes. And I don't mean a quick glance. I mean sustained, purposeful eye contact. Here's the problem. Most of us are terrible at this. We look away. We look at the floor. We look at some fascinating spot on the wall just above the other person's left ear. And we do it because eye contact feels vulnerable. It feels like you're being seen. Really seen. And that's scary. But eye contact is one of the most powerful trust-building tools you have. And I'm about to give you a trick that makes it almost effortless. Next time you're talking to someone, instead of trying to maintain eye contact, which sounds like a chore and feels like a staring contest, give your brain a different task. Try to figure out their eye color. Not just blue or brown, really look. Is it hazel with a ring of gold around the pupil? Gray-green? Dark brown with flecks of amber? When your brain switches from, I should be looking at their eyes because it's polite, to, I'm genuinely curious about what color their eyes are, something fascinating happens. Your gaze becomes natural, engaged, warm. You stop staring and start seeing, and the other person feels it. They can't explain why, but they feel like you're actually listening, like you actually care, because in that moment, you do. I'll tell you something. People who are good at this, really good, get the same feedback over and over. You listen like nobody else. You make me feel like I'm the only person in the room. And they're not doing anything magical, they're just looking. Most people never bother, but eye contact alone won't save you if the other person's walls are up. And in most conversations, especially the high-stakes ones, the walls are up. So how do you get past them without the other person even realizing it? You mirror. Psychologists call it rapport. And the concept goes back decades in NLP and clinical psychology. But you don't need to study any of that. The principle is dead simple. People trust people who are like them. And one of the fastest ways to signal I'm like you is to subtly match the other person's body language, tempo, and energy. If they're leaning forward, you lean forward. If they're speaking slowly and deliberately, you don't come in like an auctioneer. If they cross their arms, and this is key, you don't mirror that immediately. You wait. You match their breathing first. Then, slowly, you uncross your arms, open up your posture, and something almost eerie happens. They start to follow you. Not because you told them to, because mirroring creates an unconscious loop. Once you're synchronized, whoever shifts first becomes the leader of the conversation. That's you. This works in negotiations, in interviews, on first dates, with your teenager who doesn't want to talk. It works because it's operating below the level of language. You're speaking directly to the other person's nervous system, and their nervous system is saying, this person is safe. Here's the one rule. Don't get caught. If mirroring becomes obvious, it backfires hard. The other person feels manipulated instead of connected. So keep it subtle. Match their energy, not their exact pose. Think rhythm, not choreography. Now, there's one more thing I want to give you before we move on, and it's going to sound strange. But stay with me. Before you walk into any high-stakes conversation, I want you to assemble an imaginary team. I know, bear with me. Think of 3 or 4 people whose presence makes you feel bulletproof. Maybe it's a parent, a mentor, your best friend, someone you've never met, an actor, an athlete, a historical figure. Doesn't matter. Picture them standing behind you. Not metaphorically, I mean really picture it. Feel them there. Now ask yourself, how would this person walk into this room? How would they hold themselves? How would they handle the silence, the stares, the pressure? This isn't wishful thinking. It's a form of cognitive reframing. When you adopt the posture and mindset of someone you associate with confidence, your brain starts running their software. Your shoulders drop, your breathing slows, your voice finds a lower register. You stop performing confidence and start experiencing it. And here's the beautiful thing. Nobody in the room knows your team is there. That's your secret. They just see someone who walked in like they owned the place. Calm, steady, unshakable. So, you know how to enter a room. You know how to look at someone so they feel seen. You know how to sync with their rhythm and quietly take the lead. You know how to dress so the room accepts you before you open your mouth. And you've got an invisible team behind you. But here's the problem. All of that, every bit of it, gets you to the starting line. Because the moment you start talking, a completely different game begins. And the words most people reach for, they're the exact ones that push people away. Unless you know which words make people lean in and which ones make them check out. That's what we're getting into next. Here's something that will bother you. You've had hundreds of conversations this year, maybe thousands, and most of the people you talk to have already forgotten what you said. Not because you were boring, not because they didn't care, because you used the same words everyone else uses, and the brain filters out what's familiar. It only holds on to what surprises it. So let's talk about surprise. The single fastest way to make someone remember a conversation with you, faster than being funny, faster than being smart, faster than being charming, is to say something kind that they didn't see coming. I'm talking about a compliment, but not the kind you think. Most compliments are surface level. Nice shirt, great presentation, love your haircut. They're fine, they're polite, and they evaporate the second the conversation moves on because they're about something external. Something the person put on that morning and will take off that night. You're complimenting the wrapping paper, not the gift. Now try this instead. Next time you're talking to a colleague, a friend, even someone you just met, point out something about who they are, not what they're wearing. You know what I notice about you? Every time someone new joins the team, you're the first person to check in on them. That's rare. Or, the way you explained that just now, you made something really complicated feel simple. That's a skill. Watch what happens. Their face changes. There's a pause, because nobody says this stuff. We think it, sure. We notice it, but we almost never say it out loud. And that's the gap. That tiny gap between noticing something good about a person and actually telling them, most people never cross it. They feel awkward. They worry it'll come off weird. So they stay quiet, and the person never knows they were seen. When you cross that gap, something clicks in the other person's brain. It's not just, that was nice. It's, this person pays attention. This person sees me. I feel valuable around them. And once someone feels valuable around you, they don't forget you. Not tomorrow, not next year. You become one of those rare people they actually want to talk to again. But here's the part nobody tells you. Compliments aren't just a gift to the other person. They're a tool for you. Because they change the temperature of the entire conversation. One genuine, unexpected compliment delivered in the first 2 minutes can turn a cold room warm, a tense negotiation softer, a stranger into someone who's suddenly rooting for you. Okay, compliments open doors, but what keeps people in the room? What makes them lean forward instead of checking their phone? This is where it gets counterintuitive. Ask for help. I know, everything in you resists this. We've been trained since childhood to look competent, independent, self-sufficient. Asking for help feels like admitting weakness. But here's what actually happens when you ask someone for a small favor. Back in the 1700s, Benjamin Franklin had a political rival who couldn't stand him. Outright hostility. Instead of trying to win the man over with arguments or flattery, Franklin did something strange. He sent the man a letter asking to borrow a rare book from his personal library. The rival, flattered by the request, sent the book. Franklin returned it a week later with a warm thank you note. And from that point on, the man who had been his enemy became one of his most reliable allies. Franklin wrote about this himself. His explanation was simple. A person who has done you a favor is more likely to do you another than someone you've done a favor for. Psychologists later named this the Benjamin Franklin effect, and the research backs it up. When we do something kind for someone, our brain needs to justify the effort. So it tells us a story. I helped this person because I like them. The action creates the feeling, not the other way around. So what does this look like in practice? You don't need to ask for rare books. Keep it small. Hey, you know more about this than I do. What would you suggest? I'm stuck on something. Can I get your take? You've been through this before. What did you learn? When you ask, you're not lowering yourself. You're elevating the other person. You're saying, your experience matters. Your opinion has weight. And in return, they invest in you. Not because you tricked them, because you gave them something everyone craves and almost nobody offers. the feeling of being needed. Now, you've complimented them, you've asked for their help, the conversation is flowing. And then you do the one thing that kills more conversations than awkward silences and bad jokes combined. You forget their name. Don't feel bad. Almost everyone does. We hear a name and within 30 seconds it's gone. Not because we're rude, but because in the moment of introduction, our brain is busy processing a dozen other things. Their face, their handshake, the social context, our own anxiety. The name gets bumped out of working memory before it ever reaches storage. But here's what you need to understand. A person's name is, to them, the most important sound in any language. Dale Carnegie wrote that in How to Win Friends and Influence People back in 1936, and nothing has changed since. When you use someone's name in conversation, naturally not every other sentence like a car salesman, it sends a signal. You matter enough for me to remember. So, how do you actually remember? Here's the trick. The moment you hear someone's name, don't just repeat it. Anchor it to something visual. Something absurd works best. You meet a woman named Marina? Picture her standing on a yacht. A guy named Clay? Imagine his face made of clay. The weirder the image, the stickier it gets. Your hippocampus, the part of your brain that handles memory, loves novelty. Give it something unexpected to latch onto, and it'll hold that name for hours, days, sometimes years. And if you do forget, don't fake it. Don't avoid using their name for the rest of the night. Just ask, "I'm sorry, remind me of your name?" People don't judge you for forgetting. They judge you for pretending you didn't. All right. Names, compliments, asking for help. You're building a toolkit. But there's one more piece in this chapter, and honestly, it might be the most powerful one. It's the reason some people walk into a room and everyone gravitates toward them without quite knowing why. And it has nothing to do with charisma. It has to do with generosity, but a very specific kind. I call it the favor forward, and it's rooted in one of the most well-documented principles in behavioral science. Robert Cialdini, in his book Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, describes reciprocity as one of the 6 fundamental drivers of human behavior. The principle is almost embarrassingly simple. When someone does something for us, we feel a deep, almost biological need to return the favor. It's hardwired. Every culture on Earth has it. And it's so powerful that even small, unsolicited favors can create a lasting sense of obligation. Here's how to use it. And I want to be clear, this isn't about manipulation. This is about becoming the kind of person people genuinely want around. Do something for someone before they ask. Not something huge. Not something that screams, "I'm trying to buy your loyalty." Something thoughtful. You see a colleague struggling with a task you know well? Send them a quick guide without being asked. A friend mentions they're looking for a new dentist. Text them a recommendation that night, not 3 weeks later when you finally remember. Someone at a networking event says they're trying to break into an industry you know people in. Make the introduction the next morning. The key is speed and selflessness. You do it quickly, you don't make a big deal out of it, and you don't ask for anything in return. No strings, no "you owe me one," nothing. Just help. What happens next is almost mechanical. The person on the receiving end feels something shift. They didn't ask for this, they didn't expect it, and now they carry a small, pleasant debt. Not a financial one, an emotional one. They remember you as the person who showed up without being asked, and when you need something months later, a referral, an introduction, a good word to the right person, they're not just willing to help, they're eager, because the balance in their head has been off ever since you made that first move, and they've been waiting for a chance to even it out. This compounds over time. One favor forward becomes 2. 2 becomes a reputation, and a reputation for generosity is, quietly, the most valuable asset you can build in any career, any social circle, any relationship. People don't recommend the smartest person they know. They recommend the person who helped them when they didn't have to. Now let me pull all this together for a second. You know how to compliment someone so they feel genuinely seen, not just flattered. You know how to ask for help in a way that makes people invest in you instead of pity you. You know how to anchor a name so it sticks. And you know how to create a gravitational pull around yourself just by being generous before anyone expects it. These are the words and the gestures that make people lean in. But here's what I want you to sit with. Everything we've covered so far, The entrance, the eye contact, the mirroring, the compliments, the names, the favors, all of it is what you do. The most powerful communicators I've studied have one more move, and it's not something they do, it's something they stop doing, something most people would never think of, and it changes the entire outcome of the conversation. That's where we're going next. I want you to think about the best conversationalist you've ever met, the person who made you feel heard, understood, completely at ease. Got them? Good. Now think about what they actually did, not what they said. What they did. I'm willing to bet the answer is not much. They didn't dominate the room. They didn't have the cleverest lines. They weren't performing. They were just present. And more than anything else, they were comfortable with something that terrifies most people. Silence. Here's the secret nobody talks about. The person who controls the silence controls the conversation. Not the person who talks the most. Not the person with the best arguments. The person who can let a pause hang in the air without flinching, that's the person everyone in the room unconsciously defers to. And there's a reason for this. When you speak quickly, without breaks, filling every gap with sound, your voice rises, your pace accelerates, and your audience reads a very specific signal. This person is afraid of losing my attention. They're rushing because they think I'll leave. That energy screams insecurity, even if your words are brilliant. Now flip it. Imagine someone who makes a point, then stops. Just stops, looks at you, lets the idea breathe. What happens in your brain? You lean in. You replay what they just said. You give it weight. Because if this person isn't rushing to fill the space, they must believe what they said was worth sitting with. The pause gives the words gravity. Professional speakers know this. Stand-up comedians know this. The pause before the punchline is what makes the joke land. Trial lawyers know this. They'll ask a devastating question and then go silent, letting the courtroom feel the impact. It's the same tool, and you can use it tomorrow morning in a meeting with your boss. But silence does something else too, something tactical, and this is the part that changes negotiations. When you ask someone a question and they give you an answer you're not satisfied with, maybe it's vague, maybe it's deflection, most people jump in immediately. They rephrase, they push, they argue. Don't. Just hold the silence. Keep eye contact. Wait. The discomfort of that empty space will do the work for you. 9 times out of 10, the other person will start talking again. And the second thing they say is almost always more honest than the first. Silence isn't passive. It's the loudest move in the room. Okay, but let's say you're not in a negotiation. You're in a regular conversation, maybe with a colleague, maybe at dinner, maybe in a meeting that's gone on too long. And you notice something. The other person has checked out. Their eyes are drifting, they're fidgeting, their arms are crossed, and they're nodding on autopilot. You know the look. Most people ignore this. They keep talking, hoping enthusiasm will be contagious. It won't. When someone disengages, more words don't bring them back. They push them further away. Here's what to do instead. Stop. Shift gears. You can say something as simple as, I feel like I'm overloading you. Where did I lose you? Or even simpler, let's pause. What's on your mind? These tiny check-ins do 2 things at once. First, they give the other person permission to be honest. Maybe they are confused. Maybe they disagree. Maybe they just need a bathroom break. Second, they send a powerful meta message. I'm not here to talk at you. I'm here to talk with you. Your experience of this conversation matters to me. This alone puts you ahead of 90% of communicators, because 90% of people are so focused on what they want to say next that they never notice the person in front of them has stopped listening. Now, let's get into something sneaky. Not manipulative, sneaky. There's a difference. And this one comes from behavioral economics. It's called the decoy effect. Dan Ariely describes it beautifully and predictably irrational. Here's the setup. When you give someone 2 options, they agonize. This or that. Both seem fine. Both have trade-offs. The decision feels heavy. But when you introduce a 3rd option, one that's clearly worse than one of the other 2, something strange happens. The brain suddenly finds the decision easy. The good option next to the decoy looks great by comparison. Choice made. No stress. You can use this everywhere. Pitching a project to your boss? Don't say, we can do plan A or plan B. Offer 3. Make plan B the one you actually want. Make plan C a clearly weaker version of B. Similar scope, worse timeline, higher cost. Plan A is solid, but different. Now B doesn't just look good, it looks like the obvious choice. Your boss feels smart for picking it. You get what you wanted. Everyone wins. This works with kids, by the way. Do you want to go to bed now or in 5 minutes? Gets you a fight. Do you want to go to bed now, in 5 minutes, or after we read one story together? Suddenly the story option feels like a victory. Same bedtime. 0 battle. But here's the line you don't cross. The decoy should be genuinely inferior, not fabricated garbage designed to insult someone's intelligence. If people feel tricked, you lose more than the negotiation. You lose trust. And trust, once lost in a conversation, doesn't come back in that conversation. Speaking of trust, there's a technique for building it that's so old and so universal that we've stopped thinking of it as a technique at all. And yet it works every single time. Share a meal. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar, the same researcher behind Dunbar's number, the idea that humans can maintain about 150 stable relationships, published a study through Oxford showing that people who eat together regularly report stronger social bonds, greater life satisfaction, and deeper trust than those who eat alone. The data wasn't subtle. Eating together wasn't just correlated with closeness, it predicted it. And this makes intuitive sense if you think about it. Eating is vulnerable. You're putting something in your body. You're chewing, swallowing, maybe making a mess. You can't maintain a power pose while slurping noodles. And that's exactly the point. When you eat with someone, you're both agreeing to drop the performance for a moment. You're both human, both messy, both hungry. That shared vulnerability creates a shortcut to trust that hours of conference room conversation never will. So the next time you need to have a hard conversation, a negotiation, a difficult feedback session, a talk you've been avoiding, don't book a meeting room, book a table. Let's grab lunch is one of the most underrated power moves in communication. And if you find that you can't even sit through a coffee with someone comfortably, that's information too. It might mean this isn't a relationship worth forcing. All right, we're getting close to the end, and I saved something for last on purpose. There's a technique for difficult conversations that sounds almost too simple, but it's the one I've seen prevent more damage than any other. And it's this. When you disagree, attack the idea, never the person. It's so easy to slip. Someone says something you think is wrong, and the words that come to mind are, "You always do this," or "You don't understand," or "That's a terrible idea." But the moment you say "you," something changes in the other person's brain. They stop hearing the content, they start defending their identity. The conversation stops being about the problem and becomes about them. And once that happens, nobody wins. Instead, try, "The idea is interesting, but I think it falls apart when we look at the timeline." Or, "I'm not sure this approach will work because of X." Notice what's missing? The word "you." You're not saying they're wrong, you're saying the idea needs work. That's a world of difference. Because at the end of that conversation, you can still go get coffee together. You can still be allies. The idea took the hit, not the relationship. This is especially critical in high-stakes conversations. With partners, with bosses, with anyone you'll need to face again tomorrow. Win the argument and lose the person, and you've lost something far more expensive than the point you were making. And finally, the last move, the one that ties everything together. After any important conversation, a meeting, a pitch, a negotiation, even a first date, be the person who summarizes. Not in a bossy way, not in a "let me tell you what we just agreed on" way. Just gather the threads. So here's what I'm taking away from this. Or, "Let me make sure I've got this right." Then lay it out. Clearly, briefly, confidently. Remember the serial position effect from Chapter 1? People remember the first thing and the last thing. You already know how to nail the entrance. This is how you nail the exit. The person who summarizes becomes the person who defines what the conversation meant. And that's the person everyone remembers. Not the loudest, not the cleverest, the person who made sense of it all at the end. Let me leave you with this. Everything we've covered, the 5-second entrance, the eye contact trick, Mirroring, compliments that go deeper, names that stick, favors given freely, the power of silence, the decoy, the shared meal, protecting the person while challenging the idea, and owning the summary. None of it is complicated. None of it requires talent or charisma or a special personality. It just requires paying attention. Real attention. The kind most people are too distracted or too self-conscious to give. And that's the move nobody sees coming. In a world full of people waiting for their turn to talk, the person who actually listens, who watches, who mirrors, who pauses, who asks, who remembers, that person doesn't just win the conversation, they become the person everyone wants to have one with.